Hello, everybody, and welcome to Poll Review. I am Bill, the company's expert, and welcome to a first-time ever live stream. I've been doing these on my Wednesday live streams for the last several weeks, but I figured I'd separate them out into its own thing. And every day, I send out polls on my YouTube channel for my subscribers to see and fill out and vote on whatever you think is the right answer, and that's what we're going to review. So let's get started. Okay, so in the last 7 days, we've had 7 polls, and this was the first one. You like my picture, by the way? Awesome. This is the first one. Job interviews are about, and the options were people skills, motivations, and personality on the one hand, or technical skills, qualifications, and experience. And I would vote for the first one. The first one, as far as I'm concerned, is the correct answer. People, skills, motivations, and personality. Because here's the deal. Although when you go to most job interviews, the questions are of a technical nature, or at least some questions are of a technical nature, that's only a smokescreen. The technical qualifications get you the interview. That's what the reviewing of resumes phase is all about. And if you are qualified for the job, they give you an interview. You move on to the next stage, right? When you get to the interview, the purpose of the interview is to see who you are as a person, what you're like to work with. And it is, in fact, about this, people skills, motivations, and personality. So even though they may ask you technical questions, what they're really assessing you on is your communication skills, how likable you are, your motivations, and what type of person you are, what are your goals, that kind of thing. And some people are surprised at this because it seems unintuitive. Why would they care about that stuff? If you're qualified for the job, that should be the only relevant thing, right? Well, no, wrong, actually. You could be qualified for a job, but if you have absolutely no interest in doing that job, that's not where you want to end up in your life, and you'd much rather do something else, and you only regard this job as a temporary stepping stone, you're going to get in there and get the hell out of there as soon as something better comes along, you probably will not be a great worker. And for that reason, they will not want to hire you. So these things are surprisingly important. Okay, in fact, one could argue that if you are passionate enough and you love being there and you love that type of work, almost nothing else matters if you have time to be trained, okay, for a lot of jobs. But generally, that's how this works. So if I had to vote on this, I would definitely pick people, skills, motivations, and personality. And 74% of you guys agreed. So that's great. As far as I'm concerned, 74% of you guys are on the right track here. Okay, moving on. Moving on to the next question from 6 days ago. This was the question. Behavioral questions in a job interview are about... Now, before we go any further, hopefully everybody knows what a behavioral question is. That's when they ask you something to the effect of, tell me about a time when you did this. Tell me about a time when you failed and had to deal with it. Tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with a coworker. Tell me about a time when you had a conflict with your boss. How did you handle it? What did you do? Things like that. Those are those questions. The answer to those questions is a personal story, okay, from your past. That's what a behavioral question is, just in case you weren't aware of that. So behavioral questions in a job interview are about what you've done, because that is what they're asking you about, or what you would do. Now, the answer, of course, if I had to vote on this, would be the second one here, what you would do. Because even though they're technically asking you about this, what have you done in the past? The reason for asking you what you did in the past is they're trying to get an idea that if they hired you and they put you in that situation again, what would you do in that situation, right? Now, there's a subtle difference here because this is obviously going on the assumption that what you've done in the past is what you would do today in the same situation. Now, we all know that that's not necessarily true. Okay, it can be true, but it's not necessarily true. So that's one flaw with this type of question. However, what they really care about is this, what you would do. So bear that in mind when you answer behavioral interview questions, because they could ask you about something you did 5 years ago. And maybe 5 years ago, you were young and you were green and you weren't really tuned in to what's the right thing to do. So you handled that situation a certain way. Maybe if you had to redo that situation over today, you would not do the same thing. You've since learned how better to handle it. And that's really what they're asking you about. That's their motivations for asking you. So when we go to a job interview and they ask us behavioral questions, bear in mind that don't give an answer to something you did in the past that you wouldn't do today if you were put in the same situation. Say what you would do today, because that's really what they're wondering. Okay, moving on. 5 days ago, I put out this question. Employers convert your value into cash. That's what they do for you. They pay you, right? They use you to do something, and then they pay you for your trouble. Okay, so employers convert your value into cash. Can you do this on your own? Meaning, can you convert your value into cash without an employer? Okay, so basically what that says is, could you, create some kind of business operation yourself, run it yourself, and make money? Now, 62% of you guys said yes. That's great. That's awesome. Now, I know that 62% of my viewers are not in business for themselves. But this is not asking whether you are. This is asking you, can you do it? Are you able to do it? Now, the other three answers here are various phrasings of the word no. Okay, I only noticed this after the fact. So the answer is no, or others can, but I can't. Okay, or I don't believe it's possible for anyone to do it without an employer. Okay, so basically it's just three different forms of the word no. Either you don't believe it can be done, or you believe it can be done, but you don't think you could do it. Anyway, the end result is the same. So it's 38% of people basically say no, 62% of people say yes. That's good, because this is a skill that everyone, in my opinion, should develop. Or put it this way, if you choose to develop the skill, you have more career options and you have more security. You don't have to worry about being laid off. You don't have to worry about jobs or anything like that, or how to get a job or any of the stuff associated with that. You don't have to worry about any of it because you can create income based on your own abilities directly. And that's a great, great skill to have. Incidentally, if you are interested in this, I have a weekly live stream called Side Hustle Ideas. My actual main line, my core competency is actually growing businesses. And so in the past, I have been a consultant, a professional consultant who has advised startup founders and small business owners and things like this. So that's kind of where I come from. Don't get a lot of chance to talk about it on this channel, but I do a weekly live stream called Side Hustle Ideas where we explore that. So if you have an entrepreneurial flair or would like to just do a side hustle, something just on the side to give yourself a little extra cash every month on top of your day job, we talk about that. So check that out. Okay, moving on. Next question. 4 days ago. This was a joke one. I try to do a funny one every Saturday. I've gotten a lot of flack for this, but every Saturday I try and put out a slightly more humorous question. So if you could speak to the manager, you would A, complain about the service, B, tell them they're doing an amazing job, 3, kick them in the crotch, D, ask if they're hiring, or just for fun, E, all of the above. And the winner is all of the above. So you'd complain about the service, compliment them on an amazing job, kick them right in the crotch, and then ask if they're hiring. That, my friend, is the key to success right there. So that's great. That's great. And whatever you answered, you got it right. There is no wrong answer. It was the best kind of question. 3 days ago. This is more of a philosophical question. It reveals more about you than it does about the person asking a question. What's more important? A, work that's enjoyable. B, an understanding boss. C, wonderful coworkers. D, generous compensation. Or E, many opportunities for advancement. Now, this one surprised me. You guys did not pick the option that I would have picked. The winner was 53% of you guys picked work that's enjoyable. Okay, what's most important? Work that's enjoyable. Okay, fair enough. Now, once again, there is no right or wrong answer. It's a question of what's more important to you. Okay, and it takes all kinds. It takes all kinds to make a world, and that's why the world is awesome, because there's a lot of variety and there's a lot of different types of people in it. And if we all were the same, it would be boring, and it would be uniform. So the runner-up was option D with generous compensation. People felt that that's important. And I'm not knocking it. I mean, that is why people work at a job, right? Generally. However, if I was asked this question, the one I would have picked was an understanding boss. And maybe I didn't phrase that perfectly. By understanding, I meant a really good boss. Okay? Because what I've found is that if you have a great boss, it doesn't matter the nature of the work you do. In my experience, that's been my experience. I've done all kinds of things. I've worked across 5 industries and doing multiple things in those industries sometimes. And I found that whether you find the work exciting or boring, the thing that makes it an absolute pleasure is having a great boss, someone who believes in you, someone who compliments you, someone who appreciates you, someone who respects you, makes you feel like you're a really awesome person, and someone you want to interact with and want to work for. I've also found the converse of that. I found that you could do something that, on the surface you'd probably enjoy, but if you have a real prick, a real jackass of a boss, they can ruin anything. Doesn't matter what you do, they can ruin it if they really want to. If you have an absolutely insufferable, unreasonable, offensive person who doesn't like you, they don't believe in you, they don't respect you, and they just generally make you feel unappreciated, and they make you feel uncomfortable and miserable. When you have that, nothing else really matters. And what's interesting is that something I mentioned on occasion is that you might think that this was the most important factor that would retain people in their jobs. But it actually isn't. We found that the boss, or I'll put it this way, the employee's perception of their boss is the most important factor in determining whether they will stay in a position long term, or in an environment long term, like in a department or in a company. That's what we found. That's the number one thing. You could pay people incredibly generously. You could give them like just amazing compensation, but in the end, they will leave. They will not stay long term because of a terrible boss. That also extends to the environment. It's not just the boss. Coworkers do play a role. If you have a bunch of nasty coworkers that are psychopaths that bully you, things like this. I mean, they can ruin anything. It doesn't matter what you do in your job. If that's the environment in which you're working, what we found is that trumps everything. They could pay you $1 million a year and you still would leave. This is what we found. If your boss and your coworkers, your work environment is bad enough. This is what research has shown with data. Okay. And that doesn't surprise anyone. That's been my experience. And I wanted to throw it out to everybody if you've had similar experiences in that department, because this suggests that no, you haven't. But hey, the people have spoken. Who am I to challenge it? Now, as we are at this juncture, just for a moment, I see we've got some questions. So let's just quickly go over to the questions here. We've got Lopfast. Lopfast says, Bill, good to see you. I had yesterday the first interview with an executive recruiter. After finishing my answers, He used to say, very good. Should I take it as positive or negative? Take it however way you want, okay? A recruiter or any kind of person in an interview type situation, it's like a negotiation. They are never going to be honest. You can't, you usually can't go by reading people's body language in these situations if they're professionals. Usually, the way recruiters famously behave is that they will not give it to you straight. They will not be open and honest. Instead, they will do anything they can to make the interaction pleasant for them. And every other concern is secondary. So they won't be honest with you. They may even lie to you when they say things. That has been known. There are some good, really amazing recruiters out there, but there's a hell of a lot of bad ones. The bad ones really outnumber the good ones. And so you can take it any way you want. I wouldn't worry about it. Just do your best. Give it your best shot, okay, which presumably you've just done. And then move on. Look for the next opportunity. Make the next interview your focus, okay? If these people call you back, great. That's wonderful. But don't lose any sleep at night worrying about it. Always be looking forward to your next interaction, to your next opportunity, your next interview, your next application. That's what this game is about, okay? Any kind of response you get usually is not a reflection of your worth as a person or as an employee. It's the biggest factor in this is honestly random chance, okay? A lot of times people are looking for a certain type of person, a certain person that they envision. Usually that person is very much like them. And you have no control over that. I mean, you could be qualified for a role and you go for an interview, but whether you are very similar to the person interviewing you or not, in terms of personality and values and sense of humor and, worldview and like all that kind of stuff, you have absolutely no control over that. Okay? It's random chance. Just keep going. And if they call you back, awesome. Go with it. How do you say this? Tai Matsuko says, the number one reason I leave jobs is because of not feeling liked, understood, or appreciated by management. Yes, and you are not alone, as I was kind of saying. That is generally what we see in the real world, and they've shown this with data. That's the number one factor, So the poll results that we just got a moment ago that we were going through kind of are going against that, but, whatever. It could be to do with how I phrased some of the options there. Scaroldino, I'm sorry if I messed up your name. I'm sure I did. Says, hey, Bill, how are you? I'm fine. I have a question. Do you think applying for multiple jobs in the same company is a good idea? Greetings. Look, it can be, and sometimes there's problems with it. If you don't know, I would apply for one, wait a day or two, maybe if you're expecting if there's a chance of getting a response in some way. And if not, just apply. Just apply. What have you got to lose? You'll never know what's going on the other end, okay? You might have a couple of bits of partial information. You might have kind of a hunch of how it might work, but you don't know. So you take your best shot, okay? You can apply for multiple positions. Always remember that the best way to apply or the best way to reach out to people is in person, okay? If you have a personal connection, okay, that's a great way. So to that end, it might be an idea is that if you have a contact at the other end, someone at that company, okay, maybe like the recruiter, okay, you're sending the applications into a recruiter. This is maybe an excuse to contact the recruiter. If you could do it by email, but preferably by phone. It would be even more effective by phone. You can leave a voicemail if necessary and say, like, look, I see that you've got this position, this position, this position. I have this qualification, this qualification, this qualification. I'm really passionate about the company. I'm excited to work here in almost any capacity. So does it make sense for me to apply for all of these separately? or should I just apply to one? What do you think? It gives you an excuse to have that interaction with the recruiter. This is a vehicle for you to signal that you're interested, you're qualified, and they remember you. You're more of a prominent candidate they've had some interaction with. And regardless of what they say, you do what you want. If they say, well, just apply for one. So you apply for one, and then you wait a couple days and apply for the others. You can do this kind of stuff. I will take 2 more questions, and then I will go back to the polls. Okay, or one more question. Lotfast says, Bill, good to see you. I had yesterday the first interview. Okay, didn't you say that already? Yes, you're pasting the same question. Okay, excellent. Let's go back to our polls. We've got a few still to go through. Okay, so anyway, the bottom line here was that you guys said, what's the most important? Work that's enjoyable. And that is a big issue, especially when you're younger. And compensation is important. However, what we found is that in the real world, usually an understanding boss and coworkers, the boss and the coworkers are the ones that are going to make or break any employment experience. And even the nature of the work and even the compensation, we found, doesn't matter in the long term. Okay, next poll from 2 days ago. The question was, I'd rather work for, and then your options are A, a big company, C, a small company, or myself. So big company, small company, or myself. Would you like to be employed by a big company, like a multinational corporation or enterprise? Would you rather be employed by a smaller company, either a mom and pop shop operation, or anything that fits in the classification of small business, which is anything under 500 employees, or work for yourself? And you guys said myself. 58% of you said that you would rather work for yourself. That's great. I think that working for yourself is an incredible thing to do. I've been working for myself for approximately 10 years. And there's absolutely no going back. If you can learn how to generate income yourself, turn your value directly into income without having to go through an intermediary like an employer, I think it's one of the greatest things you could ever possibly learn in your life. It opens up so many possibilities before you. And there's many, many other advantages too. You get to basically design your own job and harness your creativity. And if you do it right, all your ability and hard work can directly translate into making more money, as opposed to working for a flat fee, where sometimes, whether you're working really hard or you're just sort of goofing off, you get paid the same rate. And usually the rate is nowhere near the value you're actually generating. Also, the other advantage of working for yourself is that an employer, although they can be more efficient, not necessarily, but they can be more efficient because they have economies of scale on their side, as opposed to you working by yourself. The flip side of that certainly negates that advantage, is that they skim a lot off the top. They give you, they have to be compensated for their risk in providing the steady compensation, regardless of how profitable they are that quarter or that month. They are still committed to paying your salary or hourly wage. And so as a result, you can be sure that they take a huge, huge cut from that. They end up paying you something like 30, possibly 40%, but usually 30% of what you're actually generating. So, you can't see my hand gestures. I'm doing this. You even can't see it like this. My microphone's in the way, but doing this kind of like, one or the other. It's a toss-up. It depends more on your personality. And obviously, it's going to depend what industry you're in. Okay? But you got 58% of you said myself. This kind of surprised me a little. Of the runners-up here, a big company or a small company, 24% of you guys said a big company. And in the comments, some people were openly hostile to the idea of a small company. Let me just say, I have worked in 2 types of companies. I've worked in big multinationals for, the first part of my career, certainly. And then I spent the second part of my career in smaller business. Now, small being, as I said, the official definition of small in my country, Canada, is 500 employees or less. So you could have 500 employees and still be considered a small company, right? So I have found that this is far superior. Just my personal experience with it, it's far superior to this. It might have just been the choice of companies that I worked for, but there's so many advantages of working in a small company. You know, you have a lot more initiative. Your hands are tied a lot less than in a large corporate environment. You can just get on with doing things, and results matter more as opposed to process. That's what I found. You also are working with, usually, at least in my experience, a different caliber person. You're working with people that understand what's actually important, and they care less about going through the motions, you know, making it seem like you're doing work when you're actually not doing anything constructive. People care more about the end result, about, you know, what is this getting us? What good does it do? And so I like that way of thinking. That, to me, that really appeals. And on top of it, I'll say one other thing about small companies here. Who can pay more on average? Well, big companies can, on average, all things being equal. However, what I found is that the small company, at least in my experience, these are the ones that retained, that attracted and retained the best talent. All the best people in the business were working for these. Now, why is that? Because surely they could make more money if they went across the street and worked at a big company. Yes, that's true. However, the big company negated its advantage in the eyes of the workers by treating people like crap. In the small company, the people who ran the small companies, in my experience, they were super nice. They were super accommodating. They made it a really pleasant environment. They treated people like human beings. And that was the words that I had heard several employees use. At least here, they treat me like a human being. And as a result, when I was with the small company, we retained the best tradespeople, the best employees in our industry, in our region. They were all working for us. Even though we weren't paying as much, it's because we gave them all the little things. We treated them properly. We made them feel valued. And, hey, if they needed a day off, sure, you got a day off. No questions asked. That's what people appreciated. So those are some of the advantages of a small company. So if you've never worked in a small company, don't knock it. Okay? Maybe there's more there than what first meets the eye. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. Moving on to yesterday. Yesterday, I put out this poll. Very esoteric kind of poll here. Very abstract. Will you eventually win? Obviously, there's no right answer to this. But 80% of you said yes. 20% of you said no. What I thought was interesting is that I was looking at this poll. I was looking at it when there was something like between 100 and 200 votes, like it had just come out. And the ratio was 80 to 20. And then later on, when you got 4,800 votes, the ratio was still exactly the same, 80 to 20. It stayed exactly the same as all the votes were coming in. It didn't sort of fluctuate at all. So I thought that's interesting. You got a lot of people that love to argue about it. Well, what do I win exactly? And, can you please define the parameters of this question? No, it's a question. You have to answer the question based on the information you're given. That's what life demands of us. And we may not like the question. We may not feel that it's as clear as it could be. We may not feel that it's, as explained as it could be, as well as it could be. But that is the question. Given that, what would you say? This is what you guys said. And, quite honestly, life is long. There's many opportunities to learn. And even if, you're in one of the troughs, it's only temporary. Things do turn around. It's just a matter of time, and life goes on. So, yes, I think most people here will win. I would think this would be close to like 95%. The only people that would fail, that would not win, are people that don't want to win. That's kind of my personal opinion, but who am I to say anything? Okay, so that's the end of the polls for this week. Let's go over to questions. There's a new one out right now. Go to my channel and vote on it. And we will talk about the results next week in another one of these. Let's go over to, there's a couple of last minute questions here. So let's see here. Where did I leave off? Lopfast was pasting the same question a couple times. You're welcome, K. Scaroldino. And sorry about mispronouncing your name. Lopfast says, I'm sure I will be invited to a second interview with this private equity company with the head partner and head HR. What should I approach this? I don't know what you mean. Are you saying how should you approach this? That's a pretty general, open-ended question. Well, do your best. I mean, that's all I can say. Second, I mean, I've said this before, second interviews are where they go a little bit deeper into you. The danger with the second interview is that they can make it seem like it's less formal because now you guys know each other. You've been there before. You've met these people before. So it feels a little more informal. That can be a trick. Okay. Even if they play up to that, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to let your guard down, have a more unguarded conversation where you reveal more stuff about yourself, and that's where they get you. So my recommendation in general for second interviews is don't let your guard down. Treat it as formally as the first interview. And, that way, all things being equal, you will do better. Okay. Don't talk off the top of your head about topics, still kind of give diplomatic and well-crafted answers for things. Okay. They're just going to want to go a little bit more in depth. They're going to want to take a harder look at any possible issues that you might have and the type of person you are and all this kind of stuff. Lopfast, I'm not sure what language in which you are dealing when you go for these interviews, but the higher you can get your level of language, the better it will be for you, especially if you're in private equity. Okay. If you're operating in using a certain language, like the language of a particular country or the official language, your skills in that language, your ability to speak or to write, will be like basically, a sort of flag of how capable you are. People will, it's something that gives a very clear first impression of the person. So if you're operating in English, maybe just try and clean up your level of language a little. Use some punctuation, use capital letters, that kind of stuff. If you're working in private equity, I mean, that's where that stuff matters. Okay. You just keep pasting the same question. Basically, I think it's like sort of the same question. I have a second interview with a private equity with head partner and herd HR. Yeah, you see, like, once again, I can barely understand you. So, if you could improve that, especially in your dealings with a recruiter or a hiring manager in a job interview type situation, please make sure that if you are operating in English, that, you just try and, communicate a little bit technically better. That will count. How can I pass this interview? How can I approach this interview? I really want this job. Well, just the usual things. I mean, it's not about your technical qualifications. It's about the type of person you are. It's about your motivations. It's about your ambitions. It's about your communications, like all kinds of soft skills, your communication skills, your collaboration skills, how resistant you are to working with a boss. Like, do you argue when you're told like to do something? You have to argue about it every time. What are your ambitions? Do you want to be here? Do you have a particular passion for this type of job? Usually indicating in some way that you have a passion for the job will go well for you. Okay. In some way, shape, or form. Either you state that explicitly by saying, like, look, I really want this job. This looks like it ticks all the boxes that I'm looking to do, and plus it's at this place, and I know you guys' reputation. So, I just want you to know, I really want this. You could state it explicitly, or you could state it implicitly by saying something to the effect of, when they ask you, like, what does success look like to you, or one of these silly questions, you could say, like, well, I see myself working at an organization like this, where you're in this business and you have these traits and you do this kind of thing, and so you're implicitly saying, I really want to work here. Okay, but usually some component of desire to work there is required. So that's all I'll say. I am going to sign off now. I will be back very shortly, actually, for my usual Wednesday Q&A live stream. So any questions you guys have about jobs, interviews, resumes, networking, recruiters, hiring managers, discovery of jobs, the hidden job market, everything related to hiring and careers, you can ask me. I'll be back in 20 minutes for my How to Get Hired live stream, and I'll see everybody then. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys are all awesome. Take care.